Hi everyone, my name is Lisa and I'm from The Baking Coach. Today we are going to make our classic pretzel or bun kit. Let's open up our first packet, which contains 2 sheets of parchment paper, a pair of gloves, and a craft stick. But what I need for you to get, 1.5 cups warm water. Now the water needs to be water that you yourself feel comfortable with sticking your finger in and say, ooh, that's nice and warm. If you put your hand in or your finger in and you touch it and it feels hot, that's way too hot for yeast. Yeast water should be about 105 degrees, maybe 107. So it should feel warm to the touch for us. You don't need a thermometer, you just need your hands. Another thing that you will need down the road in cooking spray, 2 tablespoons of melted butter for way later. Number 1 packet, which I have right here, and I've opened it already, is our yeast. So we're gonna put that in. Right now, your yeast is fast asleep. It is just sleeping away. So what wakes up yeast is 2 things. Number 1, sugar. Number 2, water. So let's get our water in, and we have our sugar and our water, and we're gonna pour that right into the bowl. Now what's gonna happen is the yeast is all of a sudden, imagine yourself sleeping and getting some water splashed on your face. So they get startled. So when it gets startled, it's like, oh, I've been sleeping for a while. I think I'm hungry. That's what the sugar's for. So the yeast, now that it's awake, it's going to start and eat the sugar. So this is what it looks like when it first goes in your bowl. And you don't want to over stir this. Now this poor little yeast just woke up. If you stir it too much, you'll make it dizzy and then it won't work as well. So just gently stir it a little and then let it sit for 5 minutes. Now I have yeast that's been sitting for 5 minutes, and as you can see, it's a little foamy on top. Okay? So the yeast right now is growing nicely. Now we're going to add in some more ingredients because it can handle it. So the next ingredient we are going to add in is our number 3. I'm putting the gloves on that were in your packet. I'm going to get our number 3, which is our flour mixture. So this is a mixture of some flour and some salt. We use our craft stick and we're going to stir it up just like that. Now the craft stick is just to get it started so that it doesn't stick all over your gloves. There we go. Once the craft stick becomes ineffective and the dough really gets hard to move around, then just stop using it and start squeezing the dough with your hand. The next thing I have is my extra flour, which is packet number 4. We're going to use some of it in the dough if we need it, and the rest we are going to use when we're handling the dough later to form either our pretzels or our pretzel buns. So this dough is looking pretty good. It should be a little tacky, but not sticky. Did you see how fast that came together? See how simple this is? Okay, but it's a little on the stickier side because if it sticks to my glove just a little bit, I'm gonna add in just a little bit more flour. Just pinch in some flour. Don't overdo it with the flour because you're gonna need some later. The water hides in the middle of your dough, so you wanna make sure to give it a good squeeze, because if your dough is too sticky, it's gonna be too hard to form pretzels later. So what you could do too is pull the dough inside out. See how I'm pulling it inside out? And now it's pretty sticky here. So let's take our flour, add in a little bit more. You'll probably use, if I had to guess, if you measured your water correctly, you'll use about half of this extra flour for rolling. So you really want to be able to hold that dough, and when you let go, it just drops out of your hands without sticking to your gloves. So what I'm going to do with the extra flour for rolling, I am just going to put it all on top of my dough just like that, and give my dough a good coat. Cover this entirely with plastic wrap, and you are going to let it sit for 45 minutes. Keep your gloves available. Now you can see the dough has risen and doubled in size. So here's our pretzel dough, and now I'm going to divide the dough in half. Just going to use the craft stick again to just divide this dough in half. Great. Next thing I'm going to do is take the half and cut it in half. And what I'm trying to achieve here is to get 8 equal pieces. And now I'm going to cut the half, both halves, into quarters. And that will give you 8 equal pieces. Now I've got extra flour for rolling in my bowl, which I will use because as you stretch this dough, you will need some flour because the dough will get a little sticky on the inside. So here's my dough. Now, the next thing you want to do before you start to form your pretzels, take a cookie sheet and spray it with cooking spray. Okay, get that parchment nicely sprayed. And now I've got my pretzel dough rope. And it should be, if you have it on diagonal of your parchment paper, it needs to measure the length of your parchment paper on a diagonal. Okay. Then what you want to do is make a U. And then at the end of the U, you crisscross it over and then twist it like that. You can spread this out a little. Now you're going to take this part here and bring it over. And that will make your pretzel shape. So if you want to make pretzels, then that's what you would do for the rest of the dough. But if you're going to do buns, very simple. You just roll it into a ball, just like that. Nice smooth ball. There you go. And then you're going to take your dough ball and simply cut a deep slit, crisscross slit into the top. And then you would repeat that 8 times. Just going to add to this bowl here 2 cups of warm water. This is the final execution of making pretzels. Okay, this is number 5. You're going to take your baking soda, just like that. Put it in there. Take your craft stick. Okay. And then what you would do is pick up your pretzel, just like that, and you dunk it into the solution of baking soda and water. This is what makes it super brown. Then you place your pretzel back onto the pan, but do this just before baking. Don't do it any earlier than that. And then you want to take your pretzel, little bit of butter here, and rub it right on top of the pretzel. To put them into the oven, and you will bake your pretzels for about 10 minutes, and then your pretzel buns bake about 18 minutes. You want them to get a nice golden brown pretzel, already baked and delicious, and our pretzel bun. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna finish off your pretzels with our packet number 6, and that is some kosher salt. So let's get that cut open. You will need another 2 tablespoons of butter. Make sure it's new. Don't use the same one that we used before because of flour contamination. So you need a fresh 2 tablespoons of butter additional. And what you can do is you can simply just spoon it over your freshly baked pretzels, just like that. And then pinch your salt on. Thanks again for joining me, and thanks again for checking out the Baking Coach. Bye-bye, everyone.